Welcome to our webinar. My name is Nicholas. I am your host as well as the moderator for today's session on try and tested sales technique to boost conversion. Again, this is a fairly interesting topic to myself, even for reasons that we've always been talking about technology. We've always been talking about Zoho solutions. Today's topic leans a little bit more towards the business side of things, and we're going to talk about sales and techniques to boost conversion, right? So it's pretty interesting to me. Now, the idea of sales traditionally used to be frowned upon, especially by leads, your potential customers. Back then they had door-to-door salesmen, right? It was never a pleasant feeling being approached by one because you're always having that feeling of being hard sold to or hard sell to, right? And people just hate being sold to. But really, on the other hand, they do enjoy the process of buying. So you've got people who hate being sold to, you've got people who enjoy the process of buying, and really us as salespeople have to understand and look at ways that we can ease them into that process, right? Now, I may be wrong, but sales is actually the hardest easy job in the world, right? Sales is actually the hardest easy job in the world. It's a ton of hard work involved. You actually have to follow through with things, a lot of follow-ups as well. We sort of know that, but don't quote me, right? Because here's a book about sales being the hardest easy job in the world, right? And it's by Bob Frankel. So a little takeaway by Bob Frankel here is that you have to do, what you said you would as a salesperson, right? You have to do what you said you would. And the idea, of course, is people today with the internet, with the web, they are inundated with tons of information and data. They know where to look for things. They're well informed, they're equipped, and they're able to make very informed decision making. And really, our role as sales, at least with our interactions with this customer, is to feed them this information, but really help them be able to plan and to implement. So the autonomy is with them, right? They have that power. We're pretty much just there to assist and to be a Panadol to their problems, right? How can we help them resolve problems? So while it's important as salespeople like us to really know our product pitch very, very well, at the end of the day, right? It's even more so important to pay attention to customers. So today's discussion really is the focus and the basis and the crux of our topic today. It's really based on how you can be customer-centric and why you should be, right? So agenda is fairly simple. We will talk about lead generation. How can we drive more leads, but more so quality leads? How can we establish ourselves as expert and come in and showcase our expertise so that we boost their confidence? We inspire confidence enough to actually establish some form of context with these prospects and increases our chances of conversion, right? And finally, we will touch on some of the subtopics like handling rejections. With rejections, I mean, things like this bound to happen, and there's always a recovery process, right? It's never really the end of the world. Perhaps some people might go into budgetary issues. Some might not be able to make that purchase at a given point of time due to several different reasons and permutations, right? But again, as a salesperson, how do we recover from that process? That is important. That's why it's part of today's agenda and topic as well. So, first point, let's talk about driving quality leads, more quality leads. And to be able to do so, again, the idea is you need to be able to have an idea of your customers. What is their profile? What is their persona like, right? And again, we have to know that there's no secret formula behind salespeople who have consistently exceed their targets, their KPIs, as well as people who have outperformed their peers. They don't necessarily, work the extra hours. They are hard workers, don't get me wrong, but really the difference lies in how they utilize their time. And time management is a skill in sales, right? You have to be able to sell smarter. You have to pursue the right leads, the quality leads, so that you have higher chances of conversion. And question is this: how then do we know this is the ideal customer profile? Okay, there's several points here. There's several traits to really look out for. Number one is to look at your existing customer base. You need to look into your existing customer base. Whether it's a CRM that you're looking at, you have to understand them inside out. You have to know this trait. These are the people who perhaps you have converted through the shorter sales cycles using the lowest acquisition cost. People whom you are able to make cross-sell, upsell opportunities to, people who gives you really good, solid, real-time feedback because they're genuinely interested in learning about your products, genuinely interested in helping improve the brands as well as the service. That's why they're giving this feedback. And you know these are the people who are invested, right? So these are general traits. There are more, of course, but knowing customer inside out is the foundation. You have to have that first step done right. So again, once you've found your best customer, you need to be able to analyze their journey. You need to look at the demographics, even adding one more psychographics as well. You need to know what made that conversion so quick, right? What was that convincing factor? You need to know the pain points that you've actually helped them solve. All right, and if you're in B2B sales, you need to be able to consider their roles, whether they are the decision-making person in charge, who the decision makers are, right? And of course, we have to know that there's also software at the end of the day to be able to help us do this. Mapping your customers' buyer's journey, knowing their roles in the company and mapping that to the record, right? The industry, the company size, and surveys and interviews are, by the way, great ways to do so, right? And there are several avenues to go about this. But driving more quality leads, again, when we take a look at this, one of the first thing is how we can gather automation to help us with lead generation and to help us with lead scoring. And in sales, time is money. In business, time is money. And it's important to really leverage on the idea of automation as much as possible. A chatbot in this case, really, as you deploy that, it can help you collect your information about leads. It can help you answer the right questions. It can help you convey the right product based on the requirements at a given point of time by the prospects or by the customer. Right? These are automation features. These are automation aspects that a bot can do for you. So even with the bot itself, then the idea of a software live chat agent, a chatbot these days, really is to make it as simple as possible for your customers as well as for you as a brand. Right? Even when it comes to configuration, customization, that process has to be easy. So again, if you look out in the market today, there are a lot of codeless bot builder that is really all based on drag and drop basis. Minimal coding and scripting involved. And the idea is that you have to have a flowchart in mind. And once you map out the flowchart, you map it to the bot responses, you publish it onto the web. And there you go, you get it running, right? So once you're able to identify that, once you're able to deploy that, you know that you're actually automating your lead generation process, right? But you also need to be able to vet your leads based on that. So any leads that you're able to capture and gather, you need to be able to assess them, you need to vet them. In that case, you need a lead scoring mechanism, right? So in most of the bot today, you can tag a lead score to that. So some lead scoring rule has to be set up. And that's going to save you a bunch of time, especially when you have many, many different leads to look at. You want to be able to focus on the leads with the highest conversion chances. So one of the points here, number point 3 here about driving more quality leads, of course, is exhibition at trade shows. This is a no-brainer. This is where your leads get to know all that's new about the market, all that's new about your brand, your services, your product line, right? This is also one of the platforms where you get the most quality leads you can get, right? You want to be able to go through that majority of that sales process at that given point of time. That actually leads to shorter conversion time down the road, right? You're able to do up everything at the given spot as you're interacting with their prospects at your trade shows. So another thing is to actually go into getting in-depth details of your prospects. During that interaction, you want to gather as much detail as possible. Now, again, if this is an online interaction, you want to be able to gather as much detail as you can find about your prospects from the website, using things like their locations, what are some of the pages that they visit the most, what are the time spent on each page of your website. These are important details to know about their interactions on your web. And again, if you're operating in a B2B space like us, you need to be able to look at their company size, their domains, right? Who are their stakeholders, the job roles, and decision-making powers, and the list goes on. And really depends on the industry that you're working in. So these are areas that we need to look at. Now, another point where you can come in as a really, really credible salesperson and boost your conversion rate is to establish yourself as an expert, build credibility. Of course, you need to have a strong online presence. And that being said, you need to look at people who are successful in the industry and really start by following and building around a strategy with your own personal touch to that. It need not be all industry expertise. You need to still show that human side of things. You need to show the behind the scenes right? It needs to be relatable, in short, right? That's a layman. And you have to actually look out for industry influencers and find opportunities to actually collaborate with them. Right? Collaborate with these industry experts, contribute your thoughts to their posts, to their captions, right? And that will really help associate you with them. Now, we have to understand that negative news actually travels faster than positive one, right? Negativity spreads faster than positivity, and we have to understand that. So don't come across as disingenuous. Be genuine. Promise only what you can deliver. Remember, again, attributing back to Bob Franco, he spoke about uh, as you promise, you need to be able to follow through. That's really important in sales, right? It's simple, but it's not an easy thing to do when you're in execution. All right. So be approachable, be genuine. Don't be seen as a salesperson who, once you close up that deal, you ride off into the sunset. That's never a pleasant feeling to get it, right? I've done that before. I mean, I've experienced that before, and that was never a pleasant feeling to be in, right? Knowing that the sales agent has take my money, but really disappear when I needed that form of support, right? So take full responsibility. Now, you also want to be able to boost your chances of establishing your contact. It's not about just capturing leads, but having the chance for you to pitch, right? So timing is important. Perfect the timing is one of the things that people get wrong. How do we do that? And we have to understand that we're more likely to make a sale when prospects are actively thinking about their requirements. And you need to be able to tap into that window. Again, using this example that we're seeing right now, this is a website that we're looking at. Obviously, it's a virtual experience. Now, when the person or when the visitors or prospects comes onto the website, they get hit with a ton of information. Sure, right? But you don't want to get too aggressive and hammer right away, with all this information that you have, with all these statistics that you have. So you can actually schedule chat triggers on these high intent pages, things like your pricing page, things like your product page, right? And really, prompt about and engage with them from there on. Okay, so don't bombard them with message. Give them some time to ease in the process of understanding what's out there on your website. Perhaps after a good 20 seconds, 30 seconds, it's time where your chatbot should come on and interact with the visitor. So on timing, talking about follow-ups, talking about emails, there's certain best industry standard out there. Best practices in the industry, things like, maybe a Thursday and a Tuesday would actually work better. And midweek is actually the best for B2B, follow-ups like a cold call or emails, right? And in a day, there are timings to meet. So you want to look out for timing before they start their work day, which is 8 to 9 a.m. Things are fairly fresh. Their inbox are they probably spend some time going through their inbox, if you will, right? Tap into the time of people looking out for specific things, like maybe before they go for lunch, right? 11:30 to 12:30 will also be a good time. Late in the afternoon, once they've gotten things clear, would also be a good time. But really, depending on your industry, depending on the domain that you operate in, you want to be able to experiment with really different combinations here. So find out what works best for you. Okay, it's never a one-off thing. Now, remember to only call from a local number. Everyone these days really have spam detection in their phones these days. You want to be able to make sure that you don't call from a random number, you don't call from business number or long distance number, because that's going to be flagged as suspicious. All right. So make sure your call gets through, because only when you've done so will you be able to make a sale. That's again very self-explanatory. Now leave an outstanding pitch. If you do get across, you have a voicemail ready. Leave an outstanding pitch. Grab their attention. Put in some stats in your pitch, right? Grab their attention. It has to be done in a storytelling manner as well, right? It's not going away saying that, hey, we've got this product, this and that, grab this by now. 9 times out of 10, that's not going to work in today's context. And remember the follow-up. It's always about the follow-up as well. So request for a callback. Find out a good time to connect. Ask for that. If it goes unanswered, it's possible that your email is actually buried at the bottom of the inbox. And again, you want to be able to pop it up in the inbox. So send another follow-up email. Now, I want to talk about increases chances of conversion. And this leans less towards the technical aspect. It's a little bit more psychological, if you will. So what do we mean by mirror your prospect here? And we have to understand that people are more receptive if they like you. And the idea is that you want to be able to match their energy. You want to match really their vibe, right? That's the language that we're using these days, their vibe. You want to match their energy. Now, even if this is an online virtual Zoom call, you want to be able to exercise some form of judgment and just look at where they're going, mirror their body image, but don't do it in a way that it's overly mimicking them. It really just comes across that you're mocking the behavior. So that is one of the ways to really build rapport. I'll expound on this a little bit more. But if you take a look at point 4 here, according to American Psychological Association, there's this thing called the mirror neurons in the brain, and they're responsible for instant connection. And to achieve that and to fire off that sort of neuron, let me explain by using this theory here, right? This is actually one of the experiments that was carried out on primates, monkeys, if you will. So one of the images, the monkey was holding onto a banana, and certain region of the brain gets fired up, right? The mirror neurons gets fired up. Now, again, when the banana is held in the hands of the scientists or the person running the experimentation, the same region of the brain gets fired off. The same set of mirror neurons gets fired off, right? So that's really interesting to ourselves, how we actually recreate the actions ourselves. So to a degree, I think we can safely say that this is exercise that sort of promotes empathy as well. So if you really are interested about this concept, this idea of mirror neurons, here's a book that I highly recommend. It's a book by Daniel Goleman, Social Intelligence. He actually expounds on the fact on how mirror neurons contribute to the aspects of building rapport. And you can really use this in sales as well. Building rapport with your prospects, building rapport with your customers. So number 2, present yourself as an expert. We'll touch on this. Again, we spoke about people not being wanting to be sold to. They still enjoy the process of buying. But really, instead of trying to hard sell, come across as an expert. Be genuine, right? Come across yourself as an expert. Know your products well. Again, in sales, I think one of the best things to have is product knowledge. So again, if you're in technical sales, you have to know the product, you have to know the software, you have to know the solutions so that you can help pitch the solution across and market it to help address the pain point of your customers. Now, listening more doesn't hurt actually, right? Majority of the best salesmen out there actually listens more. They ask the right question to get the right response and sort of work their way through that conversation. So listen more and talk less. You want to be able to hear what the prospect actually says first, even if you have a ton of idea about the solutions they're looking out for. Let them talk about past solutions that they have tried out, the previous demo sessions they have had with your competitors. From there on, you know what's actually lacking. So you allow yourself that space to build onto that conversation and to find out new ways of pitching, right? So that's why it's always helpful to be able to listen more, be an active listener, talk lesser. You are only supposed to come in and talk during the second half of the conversation, right? That's really what you should be able to do. Not coming across as overly aggressive, not trying to dominate conversations like usual. This is really not a meeting. It's more so a customer-facing activity. So listen more, talk less. Now, number 4 point, of course, is to focus a pitch on customer pain point. Again, we sort of spoke about this earlier on. You need to be able to be the Panadol to majority of your customers' problem. Now, people aren't interested in your brand. They aren't interested in just looking at your products and services. They want to know what can they get out of that, right? How can they help the solution? So again, talking about all your features really won't impress your prospects. Now, in case you want to know, what you should focus on is you need to focus on their pain points, right? So perfect your pitch, be prepared, rehearse yourself well with all these details on your prospects. Couple that with some listening exercises that should help you get the job done. So master the art of storytelling as well. I mean, these days it's all about putting up stats in our pitches, right? Saying that there's a certain percentage of the industry doing this, following this trend. Great. But you need to also be able to story tell. People are moved by emotions. They're moved by story. They buy magic, right? So if I can throw in some stats here again, just to show you, 5% of people actually remember statistics. A good 60+% of people actually remember story. Here's another book. We spoke about 2 books, right? First book was by Bob Frankel on sales being the hardest easy job in the world. Second one was on social intelligence, and here's one that talks about the stickiness factor, how to make it stick. And there are really a couple of acronyms that are pretty useful here. Success, right? Your story has to be simple, It has to be unexpected. You don't want things to be highly predictable. You want to give some space for them to really guess, to imagine, right? Imagination is a very powerful faculty. You have to tap onto that space. It has to be concrete, it has to be practical, appeal to their emotions, sure, but at the end of the day, you need to be able to use story, you need to be able to use social proof. Put it in layman, use cases, customer case studies, right? So work on those aspects. Get the marketing team to help you with that and use those collaterals to sell, to engage and to convince and to persuade or influence, right? Another point will be the primacy effect. We have touched on a lot of theories today. So what is the primacy effect? So primacy effect is when people are given a sequence of information, specifically in the form of a list or a listicle. The data at the end of the sequence is actually the most remembered, as well as the data that's at the very start of the list. It tends to be remembered the most. So anything in between tends to not register, tends to not be assimilated by anyone. All right. Like what I said, information in the middle, it's least remembered. So in your sales pitch, remember, pitch across the most important point from the get-go, right? And then sort of when you're summing things up, reinforce on that first few pointers. Now, again, what is the primacy effect? Just to explain it a little, this is basically a form of cognitive bias or anchoring bias. Basically, for humans, there's a tendency for us to really rely on initial information that was relayed to anchor the subsequent judgment and the interpretation that we have that should come in that conversation. So if items are presented in a list, first few points tends to register the best in the long-term memory. Just remember that, all right? Now I'm going to give you a visual aid just to show you how things are. Here's a diagram, right? Things that are related from the get-go tends to register the best, and then you deep into the zone of aha. So this is a abyss. This is where things don't get registered. People start to daydream, and then finally, when you say that you're trying to end things off, you go into the zone of recent things. This is a recency effect. This is where we also get to register other additional information as well. Don't badmouth competitors. Fairly simple. This is a very important point to know. Be professional. You never want to associate someone with something negative, because at the end of the day, it comes back to you. And there's this phenom called the spontaneous trait transference. Again, it's when a person is when you actually badmouth about someone, right? You mention and describe a specific trait, a negative trait of someone, and that bounces back to you. People associate that with you instead. So you don't want that, right? It's a bit of karma. But instead of counting your competitor's flaw, be factual, focus on what makes your product better. That's the most important thing. You need to know how your product stands out. Again, if you're fully confident in your products as well as your services, there's really no need to do these underhanded means like bad-mouthing, gossiping, talking bad, and trying to splash some mud, right? All this really would not enter the conversation now. It would never have crossed your mind if your product works. So give a preview. Make sure that at the end of the day, you give a demo, all right, or give a trial to your product. Prospects are actually far more likely to buy if you give them an inside look of your products and the services through a free trial without any financial commitment. Of course, if you don't have a free trial, you want to be able to ask for a demo session. You can give a demo session. And this really reduces the risk of people making assumptions about your products, right, prior to a purchase or during a purchase. And guarantee is important. Make sure you provide some form of guarantee. In what sense? Like a form of a refund or a form of a replacement, right? We tend to think of this as warranty. So just make sure that the money, the money back guarantee is actually structured right, just to make sure that your business, yourself, you're not taken undue advantage of, right? So the point here says structure your money back policy right, so that abrasive customers do not take undue advantage of. There are instances like such. Be careful, protect your customers, protect yourself. So really, I think, as you have done all these great demos, these great features, there's really no use fishing if you don't care enough to man your fishing net, because your fishing net is where you capture the most fish. So you have to understand that once your products or once your checkout process is really frictionless, all you need to do is to make sure that, things are frictionless for them, okay? There's, by frictionless, I mean maybe a couple pointers here, like easy site navigation. There's no forced creation of account. You don't need to put people through the process of a long sign-up form where they drop off halfway or they experience something we call cart abandonment, right? There's no unexpected processing or shipping charges. These are very important points to really think about when it comes to streamlining and making your checkout process as smooth as possible. Now, when you deploy a chatbot, it's inevitable that you have a huge influx of conversations. You have a steady, flow of prospects, if you will. And again, if we think about it this way, is really today everyone's pretty much good with their money, right? We sort of invest it in something that gives us regular return, and we want to be able to associate that idea with sales as well. So how do you work hard to generate sales? How do you find the people with the best fit and get them to buy from you regularly, right? Otherwise, you're going to be caught in this vicious cycle of prospecting and moving them across the sales pipeline. It's a ton of time. And if you don't use automation as well, that's going to waste you more time. Okay, so you need to have an effective onboarding process. By then, we need blasting out emails, giving out emails on how to best use the product, right? Best practices, things like this. You need to be able to gather feedback. Make sure you're checking in with the happy customers because these are people who will possibly give you the most sales, right? Just because people aren't complaining about your products or services or your support doesn't mean that they are necessarily happy. Okay, a lot of the unhappy customers, they don't voice out, they quit silently. They just sort of secretly decommission the use of the services quietly. So you don't want that. Regularly engage them, get them into the feedback process. Develop good relationship, maintain them. Make sure your happy customers remain happy customers and that they are happy enough and convinced enough to go around championing and evangelizing your brand on your behalf. So find ways to really keep in contact with these customers even after you close the deals, but just be very cautious and aware that we should not go against companies' rule or laws. So connect with them personally on social media, get to know them outside of business, become more of a friend, but just do it within that line. All right, don't cross the line. Ask for referrals. Now, again, you'll be surprised. A lot of salespeople don't ask for referrals, and people who are actually happy, customers who are happy, tends to give testimony, right? So you need to start asking about things because 90% of happy customers are actually ready to give referrals. The only thing that's lacking, ask. You need to ask. And finally, let's move into the domains of rejection. So if ever we do get ourselves caught in rejection, just know that it's not the end of the world. There's always ways to recover this process. Perhaps people might have some budget issue. Perhaps they might not be able to make their purchase at a given point of time because they may not be the main decision maker, right? So understand, have that conversation, agree on a timeline that you can come back and revisit this conversation, right? Give yourself a second chance. Give the customers a second chance. The majority of the time, it actually works. Now, you have to be able to make enough attempts, right? At least 5 interactions. Don't push them away with too many aggressive calls or emails. Make sure that you plan out these things. In marketing, as you're blasting out social media content, you don't want to create fatigue as well. So there's content calendar, how you want to go about repurposing content and when you want to schedule that. Now, in sales, same goes, right? You need to be able to strategically plan out your calendar. When are you going to make that revisit to that conversation? When are you going to call your customers again as a follow-up, right? Know when to stop. Okay, know when to stop. Because a lot of time we push, but we need to, again, as mature adults, as salespeople, we need to exercise some form of judgment. Know when to stop. There's also a phenomenon called the sunk cost fallacy. It's very unlikely that people will give up on something which they already invested time, resources, energy into. All right, so keep that in mind. If customers do stuck in the stage for too long, if your prospect stuck in that pipeline for too long, send a breakup mail. It's okay. Okay, know when to stop, know when to cut it off. You want things to end on a good note as well. Okay. So finally, you want to be able to review your performance. Just take a look at all these past sales interactions that you've had. Analyze your sales data. Collect as much data as possible from calls, from emails that's being sent. These are data that are very important for you to generate insights on. And then compare your rejection rate to closure rate, right? You want to be able to know if your strategy is working, your tactics is working. If your tactics are not working, revisit that, change that up, switch that up. Okay? So a couple more tips. You need to be able to block off time slot to focus on one activity at a time, right? Unless multitasking improves your efficiency, you need to block off time for activities like chats, calls, emails. You want to be able to run that focus, okay? And as customers, you need to put yourself in the shoe of the customers, okay? Really to analyze what draws you and puts you off in a sales transaction. Once you're able to exercise some degree of empathy, you're going to become a really good salesperson. Always have an agreed upon next step after every quality prospect interaction. Okay, that is important as well. So contact the right people. Make sure you're contacting the right people. You don't want to be wasting time on calls that probably won't result or amount to anything. Again, if you're in B2B sales, follow your target businesses to keep track of all events that could drive a purchase. So these are actually some bonus tips, pretty self-explanatory that we're putting out there in point form. But at the end of the day, I think while this is a psychological aspect, right? As you're having conversations, you're dealing with people, you're dealing with emotions. It's a lot to do with psychology. Never attempt to guilt trip a prospects, no matter how good a rapport you have. Okay, treat your customer as a friend, but don't cross that line. We never treat our own friend that way, so don't treat customer that way. So we've spoken quite a fair bit about sales tactics. Now let's finally dive into what are tools that can support. Again, if you're looking at tools to really help you with the above discussed tactic, look no further. We've got something called SalesIQ. This is a live chat agent that you embed on the website. That's going to help you with physical tracking. So you're going to be able to know the different visitors from different regions that are really tapping into your website chatbot, right? You'll be able to exercise some form of lead scoring. You can crop information on the web and reach that specific profile of that customer or of that new prospects that you're dealing with. And these bots are not difficult to build. They're codeless bot builders. They're fairly easy to build and assign, and you can deploy that in just a matter of days or weeks, really depending on how well you know your business process, how well you are able to map out certain predefined responses. Again, if you want something more sophisticated, more for advanced usage, more dynamic, you have to be able to deploy some form of scripting. That's a little bit more technical, but that's a conversation for another day. All right. So I want to thank you for making time to join this session. Check out our various links, our social media, follow us on LinkedIn. We are available on the web. Go to zoho.com. Otherwise, you can go to www.zoho.com/salesiq. Now, if you want to reach out to us on information, you want to have a chat with someone from the APAC team, check out this email over here, info@apac.zohocorp.com. So thank you once again. I'll see you around the block really soon. We'll have another very thorough conversation on this. Until next time. Thank you.